Good morning. It's going from bad to worse in West Asia. We'll bring you all of those developments, impact on our own markets right here on Power Breakfast on CNBC TV 18. I'm Hormaz Fatakia. With me is Vamakshi Dhoria. Vamakshi, good morning. A lot of developments in West Asia. A lot is an understatement. We have to cover a lot of ground on the show today.
Well, absolutely, Hormaz. Absolutely action-packed weekend. Nothing short of escalations that have taken place. And of course, we do have the Asian markets that have opened in a sea of red. But let us take you through the top headlines.
The strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated.
The United States enters the Israel-Iran conflict by bombing Iran's 3 nuclear sites. Iran condemns U.S. strikes even as President Trump warns of more attacks if Tehran does not make peace and suggested that regime change was possible in the country.
The Iranian parliament votes for the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, the world's oil artery, even as the final decision from Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei is awaited. Oil prices have spiked to a 5-month high.
Israel and Iran continue to strike each other. Iran's air defense system intercepts hostile targets over the capital city of Tehran, while missiles were seen moving through the sky above Jerusalem and sirens heard in several areas of Israel, warning people to enter shelters.
The United Nations Security Council holds an emergency meeting at the behest of the Iranian government after US strikes the country's nuclear sites. The UN Secretary General says we must act immediately and decisively to halt the fighting and return to serious, sustained negotiations on the Iran nuclear program.
Wall Street futures fall ahead of Monday's trading session as President Donald Trump's decision to get involved in the Iran-Israel war sparks fears of rising oil prices and a bigger conflict in West Asia. Asian markets open with steep cuts, and the GIFT Nifty is also indicating a lower start for the Indian market.
And as Vamakshi was highlighting, it is a sea of red across the Asia-Pacific screen as we speak. The Hang Seng down 0.7%. The Taiwanese index is down almost 2%. So the big underperformer coming in there is the Taiwanese index. The underperformance is also coming in from the Kospi, 0.7% lower there as well. The Nikkei is down 0.6%. The Shanghai Composite, though, has opened absolutely flat, but below the flat line. So nothing positive on the screen for the Asian markets as of now. But if we pull up the GIFT Nifty as well, at the start of the first tick, it was indicating a gap down start, still indicating a gap down start. But compared to 135, 140 point down tick, we are down to 112 as of now. So it'll be interesting to see how the session progresses as we start off. For now, we are likely to start off at least 100 points lower on the index, Vamakshi.
Well, Hormaz, let us also get our viewers the details on the top story that we're tracking. Sirens have been sounded in several areas across Israel following the identification of missiles launched from Iran towards the state of Israel. The military instructed the public to enter shelters and said defense systems were operating. Meanwhile, the United States has entered the Israel-Iran conflict by striking 3 nuclear sites in Iran over the weekend. U.S. President Donald Trump said that the attacks were a spectacular military success and warned of more attacks if Tehran did not surrender.
A short time ago, the U.S. military carried out massive precision strikes on the 3 key nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime: Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. Everybody heard those names for years as they built this horribly destructive enterprise. Our objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier.
The United States hit Iran's nuclear facilities with Tomahawk cruise missiles and bunker buster bombs. Parikshit is here to tell us, to understand where the US stuck Iran and the significance of the three sites that were attacked.
Let's try to understand where the United States has struck Iran and why. US forces have struck Iran's nuclear sites in Natanz, Isfahan and Fordo. 135 US military aircraft and a submarine were used in this exercise along with B-2 bombers. Natanz now is an underground facility under 25 feet of concrete, 300 kilometers from Tehran. Isfahan has Iran's largest nuclear research facility, 443 kilometers from Tehran. Trump says all three Iranian nuclear sites have been completely obliterated. But why did the United States strike Fordo? Now, Fordo was the key reason for the US to join Israel's war. This was constructed between 2006 and 2009. Fordo is Iran's deep underground nuclear facility with over 2,000 centrifuges located 250 to 300 feet deep inside a mountain. It is 30 kilometers from the city of Qom and 95 kilometers southwest of Tehran. This is the critical one now. Fordo is Iran's main nuclear enrichment location, which is enriching uranium to almost 60% purity. Reports have actually said that Iran has achieved nuclear weapons-grade uranium enrichment of 85% at Fordo. Most importantly, Israel could not have attacked Fordo on its own, as it does not have the bombs and the missiles which can penetrate and destroy a facility 300 feet under a mountain. So how did the US strike Iran's nuclear sites? They fired 30 Tomahawk cruise missiles at Natanz and Isfahan and dropped 6 to 7 bunker buster bombs from B-2 stealth bombers. Why did the US use massive ordnance penetration bombs? The United States dropped 30,000-pound bunker buster bombs on Fordo. 6 to 7 bombs were dropped successfully in quick succession to drill the Fordo nuclear site. This was aimed at destroying the nuclear facility 300 feet below the ground in the mountain. This was the first time that the GBU-57 or this massive ordnance penetration bomb was used by the US military. Only the US government and the US military have these bunker buster bombs. In terms of impact on Fordo, Iranian Atomic Energy Agency said attack was a barbaric violation of international law. The extent of damage is unclear. Iranian state media has reported that Natanz, Isfahan and Fordo were actually evacuated a while ago and there is no significant damage, while the US and Israel say there has been a lot of damage to Iran's nuclear capabilities.
Well, thank you so much for those details, Parikshit. Meanwhile, Iran has said that it has the right to respond to the attacks. The Iranian parliament has voted for the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. However, the final decision is from Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei is awaited. If the strait is closed, it will choke 20 to 25% of the world's oil and 30% of global LNG trade. Let's listen in to Steve Leisman explaining the impact of US strike on Iran on the prices of oil, the economy and inflation.
This action, the military action in Iran, and it's just going to add uncertainty and possible additional inflation to a U.S. economy, worrying about hefty measures of both already from tariffs. Well, the good news comes in so far limited market reaction, as Brian was explaining. But those same uncertainty and inflation concerns, depending on how long they last, what kind of retaliation we see, if any, are likely to further stay the hand of the Fed, which had been waiting for the haze of tariffs to lift before doing anything with policy. In general, an oil price shock can have a similar stagflationary impact as tariffs, raising prices and reducing growth. According to a 2015 study by the Dallas Fed, $10 on the price of oil, a barrel of oil, can reduce U.S. GDP by 0.1 to 0.2 percentage points. And according to the IMF, that increase would come with a 0.1 to 0.3 increase in inflation. Ben Amos from FedWatch Advisors, writing before markets open, said it is now more questionable whether markets will continue to treat Iran as an isolated incident with solely a temporary effect on oil prices. Long-term rates may price in a reacceleration of inflation. We'll have to wait and see. Here are some oil price shocks we've seen. 1979, the Iranian Revolution up 166%, 128% for the Gulf War, a big jump for the Russian-Ukraine War, and the Arab Spring up 24%. But since 1991, I cannot find an oil event that moves meaningfully into core inflation measures, which exclude food and energy and is closely watched by the Fed. Why? Well, there are some offsets to an oil price shock. As Brian has explained 100,000 times on television, a huge domestic production means we're less affected than we have been in the past. A limited impact from temporary spike that just washes away. And oil can act as oil price can act as a tax, exerting downward pressure on demand. Let's check here. One good sign: probabilities for Fed rate cuts largely unchanged at this hour. The chance of a rate cut for both September and December around 70%. As Brian mentioned, Fed Governor Waller provided some optimism of possible July rate cuts in a CNBC interview on Friday. Now, markets have to listen closely to congressional testimony this week by Fed Chair Powell over 2 days. He had been more concerned than Waller about tariff impacts that could extend to worries about an oil price shock.
Well, Steve Leisman there explaining the complete impact of U.S.'s attack on Iran. The United Nations Security Council held an emergency meeting at the behest of the Iranian government after the U.S. struck the country's nuclear sites. The UN Secretary General said that we must act immediately and decisively to halt the fighting and return to serious, sustained negotiations on the Iran nuclear program.
We must act immediately and decisively to halt the fighting and return to serious, sustained negotiations on the Iran nuclear program. We need a credible, comprehensive and verifiable solution, one that restores trust, including with full access to inspectors of the IAEA as the United Nations technical authority in this field. The Non-Proliferation Treaty is a cornerstone of international peace and security. Iran must fully respect it.
Following U.S. strikes on Iran's nuclear enrichment facilities, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance talks about President Trump's decision-making process and how Iran responds.
No, we're not at war with Iran. We're at war with Iran's nuclear program, and I think the president took decisive action to destroy that program last night. We have to give an incredible amount of gratitude to the troops who did an amazing thing last night. Think about this, John. They flew thousands of miles away, a 30-hour nonstop flight. They never touched down on the ground, and they dropped a 30,000-pound bomb on a target about the size of a washing machine. No military in the world has the training, the skills, and the equipment to do what these guys did last night. I know the president and I are both very proud of them. But we know that we set the Iranian nuclear program back substantially last night. Whether it's years or beyond that, we know it's going to be a very long time before Iran can even build a nuclear weapon if they want to. But I actually think that raises the most important question. The president talked about this last night. We want Iran to give up their nuclear weapons program peacefully. But there is no way that the United States is going to let Iran have a nuclear weapon. And so they really have to choose a pathway. Are they going to go down the path of continued war, of funding terrorism, of seeking a nuclear weapon? Or are they going to work with us to give up nuclear weapons permanently? If they're willing to choose the smart path, they're certainly going to find a willing partner in the United States to dismantle that nuclear weapons program. But if they decide they're going to attack our troops, if they decide they're going to continue to try to build a nuclear weapon, then we are going to respond to that with overwhelming force.
Let us now listen in to David Zervos, the chief market strategist at Jefferies, to get his views on the U.S. stock futures on the back of U.S. entering the Israel-Iran war.
I think it's a response that most people would think is much, much smaller than many would have forecast given the weekend's actions. So I think you have to sort of step back and ask yourself a little bit about what are the scenarios the market is pricing. There's the obvious scenario that I think has been discussed here and is being discussed by many, that is an escalation and risks, and we're going to go down this sort of very difficult path. But there is another scenario, which is this is a beginning to an end of a period where we had an isolated Iran, we had all the sanctions, we had all the risks and difficulties, and there could be a solution.
Well, we also spoke to senior fellow of Tilotoma Foundation, Wael Awad, who is also a senior journalist, and here is what he had to say on the developing geopolitical situation.
If you wanted to talk of international law, this is an absolute violation of international law and the Geneva Convention, which prohibits any country to attack the nuclear site of another country for any reason. So therefore, if there was a peaceful solution to this crisis, we should have continued with the peaceful solution. I think the damage has been done. I remember when I was in Afghanistan, when the American used the B-52 and we saw the earth shaking. I know the amount of damage that they have caused. I covered the war there. So I think there will be some time to know the extension of the damage the US have done to the Iranian nuclear site. The whole of the Gulf is going to be conquered by the United States and the West, because once you take on Iran, then you will be able to have control on the Strait of Hormuz, the Red Sea, the Mediterranean Sea, the Suez Canal. So if that is the aim and the objective, I think we all saw from day one when Israel attacked Iran, it was a regime change policy. The whole attack was carried out by United States, by France, by Germany, by UK, and by Israel. It wasn't carried out by only Israel. Remember, this is the actual covert operation they have been planning. Even the United States press have been indicating that this attack on the Iranian nuclear site was planned a year ago.
Well, let's slip into a very short break. Up next, we tell you how these overnight cues impact our own Indian market. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. You're watching Power Breakfast on CNBC TV 18. We now have our research team joining in with how the trade setup looks like and the stocks that are likely to be in the news. First up, Vinny is joining us to get us all the market cues we need to watch out for in today's trading session. Vinny, we're not off to a great start today.
Absolutely not off to a great start as of now is what we're seeing coming in for the Indian markets. But just a quick look at what happened last week as well as on Friday. Now, Friday also the Nifty actually for the first time after a very long time, 6 sessions, managed to see about the 25,000 mark, 25,100 mark. So that was interesting. We saw mid and small cap see gains of around 1% as well on Friday. And bank also was performing well, 1.2% uptick around that level. So overall, Friday was a good trading session. Week-wise also, Nifty, the benchmark indices managed to do well. Underperformance came in the mid and small cap. Now, obviously, FIIs, we saw those adjustments coming in. So FIIs were buy coming in on Friday as well, 7,940 crores. Buying coming in from FII, while DIIs were sellers in Friday's trading session. Now, obviously, given what happened over the weekend, and like you're mentioning, we're not, off to a good start as of now, given US attacks on Iran that have dampened the sentiment across the globe as well. Brent crude prices, they did go around that $80 per barrel mark. Then they've come off a bit. But, that is an important one to watch out for because a lot of stocks will be in focus on the back of that as well. Oil stocks continue to be remaining in focus and other stocks in the Indian market as well that we'll keep an eye out on. IT, let's keep an eye out on that. Accenture reported their numbers. Revenue was a beat. Some bit of a commentary was muted. So it will be interesting to see where IT is headed. The mid-cap IT could do well. Asian markets have opened up in the red. We are seeing US futures that have seen a decline as well. And Nifty implied open is indicating a negative start for the Indian market. So important to watch out for in terms of the updates that are coming in on the global front as well as commentary that comes in from the US as well as across the globe.
IT, oil, there is a lot to cover. Vinny, thanks a lot for that. Over to Upasna now, who will list out the stocks that you need to keep an eye out for today. Upasna, good morning.
Good morning. First up, let me start with Granules India. US FDA issues Form 483 with one observation for company's API unit in Hyderabad. Next up is HAL. Company has become a successful bidder for manufacturing of small satellite launch vehicle developed by ISRO. Next up is BEL. The company has secured additional orders worth 585 crores since 5th of June 2025. Sai Life Sciences will also be in focus on the back of a block deal. TPG Asia sells 10% stake in the company for 1,505 crores. Lloyds Metal and Energy also in focus as the company successfully commissions 2 of its key strategic projects in Maharashtra. LT Foods is the next one on our radar as US Department of Commerce imposes highest possible countervailing duty at the rate of 340.7% on company's subsidiary, that is EcoPure's export of organic soybean meal to US. NLC India will also be in focus as company's wholly owned subsidiary, that is NLC Renewable, has received LOA from Tamil Nadu Green Energy Corporation for development of 3 standalone battery energy storage system projects. Next up is Zen Technologies. Company announces a strategic acquisition of majority stake in TSI Aerospace Private Limited. And lastly, EMS Limited, also on our radar, as company has said that it's the lowest bidder, has acquired L1 status awarded by UP Jal Nigam Urban Limited, and the estimated order value is around 104 crores. So all in all these stocks will be on our radar today.
Lots of stocks to watch out for, Upasana. Thank you so much for that. And finally, we now have Mangalam joining in with cues from the F&O space. Good morning, Mangalam.
Good morning. So if you look at Friday and if you look at Monday, it's a sea change in terms of sentiment. So Friday was a very good day of trade. You had both the Nifty and the sensex do extremely well. And all the heavyweights of the index, be it the banks, be it the IT index, or be it Reliance, all of them were top contributors. And IT and Reliance will be in focus today on account of what took place geopolitically. So you have, the IT pack on account of Accenture's numbers and Reliance on account of what's taking place in oil. So those will be a couple of factors we'll be watching out for. The FIs, they bought about 7,900 crores in cash on Friday, and the DIs sold about 3,000 crores. But remember, the FI volumes were higher on account of the semi-annual sensex as well as the FTSE rebalancing flows. The FIs bought about 118 crores in index futures, longs inched slightly higher from 22% to 24%. But the GIFT Nifty, now that's indicating a 100-point downtick at start. And here's where the kicker is. Remember, the FIs on Friday sold nearly 22,000 crore worth options. Where were those options sold? All of them index puts. 1.7 lakh short index puts added, telling you that the street hopes for a support or a bounce from lower levels. What are those lower levels? 25,000 put, fairly active, premium of 100 rupees. 24,900 put, equally active, premium of 80 rupees. So the street expects between 24,800 and 24,900 to see a strong bout of buying and support. On the way up, however, 25,350 to 25,370 could be a bit of a supply zone. First port of call on the way up will be the Nifty June 11th high, the pre-crisis high of 25,222. And at the lower level, we'll be watching out for important support coming in at the 20-day moving average for both the Nifty as well as the Nifty Bank. Importantly, watch out for CDSL, Hudco and Manappuram. All of them in expiry week are out of F&O band.
Important there. Interesting stocks out of the F&O band. Mangalam, thanks a lot for that. Take a short break. Up next, all the important cues from the commodities market as a result of all the weekend action. Stay tuned.
Welcome back. You're watching Power Breakfast on CNBC TV 18. We now have Manisha Gupta joining in with all the updates from the commodity space. Good morning, Manisha. All eyes on crude price.
Oh, well, absolutely. When you look at safe haven buying, that's all happening in the crude oil prices right now, up 2.5% right now at one point in time as a knee-jerk reaction after the markets opened over the weekend. We did see prices gain up by 5.5% to almost $81 a barrel. Even now at these current prices, we are trading at a 5-month highs. The markets are looking at, some sense of response from Iran. And we haven't seen that coming in. And that's the reason you've seen easing coming in on prices. In any case, globally, a lot of experts that I'm talking to tell me that this fallout will be contained. We will not see Strait of Hormuz get shut. There have been statements, there have been threats on that, but that hasn't really happened because there are way too many countries and a major chunk of nearly 20% of the global oil that flows out of that area is concerned. So we perhaps may not see that. Is the reason you have seen the crude oil prices quite contained. We are still trading below 80. We actually haven't seen any buying come in for gold prices either. And when you look at the sell-off in equity markets globally, that also is not so intense. So that tells you perhaps the worst may not happen.
The worst may not happen. That's what the street would be hoping for. Manisha, thanks a lot for that. We call time on this edition of Power Breakfast from Mamakshimi and the team that put this show together. Thank you so much for watching. Bazaar Morning Call sets you up for the day's trade.